Do you know that at least one child per week is killed by their parents in the UK? Now, when I first heard that statistic, I was shocked, I was stunned. But perhaps I shouldn't have been, because that statistic has been the same for the past 10 years. And the interesting thing is that in this society, what we're doing is blaming social workers for child's death, not the parents who have killed the child. Now, who am I and why should you listen to me? Well, my name is Michael Watson. I'm a professionally qualified social worker, and I've been a professionally qualified social worker for the past 30 plus years. Now, the person you see before you is bold and confident and is able to answer questions at court. But it wasn't always that way. If I was to take you back now, some 30 years, and you'd have seen someone who wasn't bold, who wasn't confident, who couldn't answer questions at court. Fast forward 30 years, and I've been able to give great answers at court. I became a children's guardian and an independent social worker. I acted as an expert in court proceedings, and I then went on to write a book about giving evidence to help others to do the same. But that doesn't make me anything special. I'm nothing special because of it. Any of you who've been placed in that same situation and who needs to learn the skills and needs to learn the fast could have done exactly the same thing. So I'm nothing special. Now, who is this training for? Well, this training's for you if you want to give great evidence at court. This training's probably not for you if it doesn't matter to you the outcome that you receive. But this training's absolutely for you if you want to nail the result that you want and give yourself the best chance of getting the outcome that you want. So what is it? What is this training all about? Well, it's training that helps elevate your evidence so it's of a higher quality or seen to be of a higher quality than anyone else's. And why is that important? Well, it's important because when you give evidence, the stakes are really, really high. It could involve your child, it could involve your home, could involve even your life. So the stakes are super, super high. So you want to get the best outcome that you can. But let me ask you a question. Can anyone guarantee you're going to get the outcome that you want? No, no one can. And this is where I know you're going to be pleasantly surprised. You see, I've developed a 5-step system. How many steps? That's right. It's a 5-step system. Just checking that you're listening to me. My 5-step system is called CALM. That's CALMM. Now, the first step in the 5-step system begins with letter C. And C stands for, believe it or not, calm. Because when you give evidence, you have to be calm and in control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. You can't give good evidence. It's a physical impossibility to give good evidence when you're not calm. So calm is the first step in the 5-step system. Second step begins with letter A, and A stands for attitude. And you have to have a fantastic attitude if you're going to give evidence at court. It doesn't matter how the judge is treating you. It doesn't matter how the barristers are treating you. It doesn't even matter how you're feeling. If you want to give great evidence, you have to have a great attitude. Because you can't present well if you don't have a great attitude. And if you present with a bad attitude, you're not serving yourself, you're serving those people cross-examining you. Now, the person you see before you has a great attitude, but it wasn't always that way. If I was to take you back now some 30 years, you'd have seen someone who didn't have a great attitude. It wasn't that I had a terrible attitude, but I didn't have a good enough attitude to do the work that I needed to do. See, at the time, I was working with a 3-year-old little girl and her parents. And I very soon realized that I didn't like to see the family. It wasn't that I didn't want to see this 3-year-old little girl, but it was that I didn't want to see the family because the family detested me, and they showed me that they detested me at every opportunity that they got. So it made it a very difficult and uncomfortable experience. But I didn't have an option. I was a child social worker, so I had to see it. It's just the way it was. Now, picture the scene. It's a glorious summer's day, just like today was in the UK. And no, that's not a figment of my imagination. We still do have some sunny days in the UK. And on sunny, warm days like today, I feel grand, I feel jovial, I feel happy to be alive. But on this particular day, although it was a sunny day, I didn't feel that way. And I realized it's because I was going to have to go and see that family, which I didn't really want to have to see. But I didn't have an option. So I made my way to where the family lived. They didn't live far from where I used to work. They lived in a high-rise block of flats. So I went up in the lift. I got out on their floor and went and I knocked on the door. The mother came, she opened the door, sneered at me, and didn't about turn and just went straight back inside. That is the way she habitually treated me. But as I stepped through this threshold into this flat, it was just like stepping into a different world. You see, outside, the sun was shy. It was bright, shy. It was brining. It was bright, and it was light and warm. Inside this flat, it was cold. It was dark. It was eerie. It was the type of place where your ears and your back of your neck stick up. I felt like I'd walked into some kind of horror story. The flat itself was a shell. The wallpaper was torn. The carpets were ripped. The place didn't stink, but it didn't smell particularly pleasant. The parents were over one side of the room, huddled together, whispering, not talking to me. The father never looked at me. The mother would look at me, but she always had a perpetual snarl on her face, as if she was just about to attack me at any moment. The only person who gave me any degree of welcome was this 3-year-old little girl. And she was always in her playpen, holding onto the bars and rails like that. And it made me think that's her prison. That's a little prison center, because that's where she's always at. She's always holding onto these rails, like one might do in a prison, like one might do in a prison sentence. So that's what she was doing. The only thing I remember about this little girl is that she always looked grubby. Her clothes had stain marks on them, and when I looked at her face, I could see the tear stains where the tears had rolled down her cheeks and were now mingling with the snot in between her nose and her mouth. She just looked like she needed to be picked up, washed off, and given some gentle love and care and attention. But she never seemed to get it. The other thing I remember about this little girl, in fact, the thing that was most conspicuous were her eyes. Her eyes were always focused on me. She wasn't looking at her mother, her dad, or anything else around that. Her eyes were just focused on me. And that never made sense, because I knew that children, even at that stage when I was young and naive, but children always look at their parents. But they look at their parents because they love their parents. But this little girl was only looking at me. And that was a mystery that I just couldn't fathom. One weekday morning, just an ordinary morning like any other morning, except that I was later than usual. And I was a little bit worried that my manager was going to have a go at me for being late. So when I got into the office and my manager's door was shut, I was pleased about that. So I made my way to where I worked, my desk, sat down, and I started working. About half an hour later, my manager's door opened up and she looked outside into the office. 10 minutes after that, she called me in. I thought, oh God, here we go. She's going to have a go at me now for being late. But when I got into the office, she was just sitting there, staring outside the window as if something was calling her attention from outside. We sat in silence for a long moment. Eventually, she said, "You're lucky your career's just started. Mine is just beginning."
I don't know who this is for, but
Yours
so I had a
is
moment
just
today.
beginning.
I was
So
prepping for a huge meeting.
you'll get
And
past this,
so this
but I never
edition
will.
is called
What the
You Don't
hell was she
Have to
talking about?
Prove
I didn't know what she
Nothing.
was talking about.
So again, I was having
So
prep time
that's
this
when she mentioned
meeting
the
that
little
was
girl's
going to
name
today.
and said
And it truly was a revelation, I
that she was
promise you,
murdered, brutally
of
murdered that morning by her father.
you ain't got nothing to prove. You don't have to prove anything. Now, if you got something to prove to
Now,
yourself,
that
that's
is the
different.
worst
And I
experience any
just
social
sat
worker could
in
deal
that
with.
thought
That's
of,
like a nightmare that no
I ain't
social
got
worker wants to deal
nothing
with.
to prove.
And I knew that sooner or
And at
later I was going
first
to have to
was
give
the
an account
micro,
of the work that I'd done.
perspective,
I'd have to give
zoomed
an
into
account
just
of the
me.
work to
Like,
someone. And I
wait
knew
a
it would be
minute,
sooner or later I was going to have
not
to give
just
an
the
account to the
Kim
courts.
Fields thing,
But I had never been to court,
but
so I didn't know
just
what to expect. But I
not
knew
to
enough
take that
from the
lightly
way
and not to
people around me were
push
acting and
past it
behaving
because I have a
that it wasn't
tendency
going to be
to do
pleasant.
that.
And in the days and weeks leading up to court, I felt like there was this almighty big, dark, heavy cloud just above my head, waiting to come down on me. That big, dark, heavy cloud represented court, something I wanted to run a million miles from, but knew that I couldn't get away from. Well, as I said, I did go to court. I went to the Royal Courts of Justice in the Strand in London. Picture a big stone cathedral. That's what it looks like from the outside. And as I got through the electronic security gates, the first thing that hit me was just how cold it was in there. It was freezing. Because it's a big stone building, but it wasn't just cold in terms of the temperature. It's cold in terms of the atmosphere, because I don't know if you know, but courts aren't pleasant places. They're places of acrimony, they're toxic places. Eventually, I found my way to the court I was meant to be in. When I got there, I was placed in a witness box. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever been placed somewhere that you don't want to be in by someone in a position of authority over you, well, you've got an idea what I felt like. Actually, I felt trapped. I wanted to get away. I wanted to run a million miles from there, but I couldn't. I knew I couldn't. And whilst I was in this witness box that I didn't want to be in, I was being asked these horrible, horrible questions by these barristers. These barristers had flipped the script and were making out I was the person responsible for this child's death. That's what they were saying. It was all my fault. If I had done this, if I had done that, this child would still have been alive. So at a time when I'm at my lowest ebb, when I'm not prepared emotionally, psychologically, professionally, when I'm traumatized and feeling guilty and feeling as low as I can be, that's the time I'm being asked to answer these horrible, horrible questions that I can't answer because I'm not skilled, I'm not experienced enough to answer. But these questions are coming through thick and fast. In fact, they're like darts being hurled through the air at me. And I'm like this massive dartboard that they can't fail but hit because I'm sitting in the witness box. I'm a sitting duck. Now, are these questions hitting me, these darts hitting me physically? No. Are they hurting me physically? Again, no. But psychologically and emotionally, I am in the most intense pain. I'm in so much pain that I'm in denial. I think I'm in some kind of dream and I'm pinching myself to wake up, but I'm not waking up and the pain's continuing. And in fact, I'm in so much pain that at one stage, I look up and I look around the room. I think it's got to be someone here that can help. So there's got to be someone here who cares. But as I look around the room, there's no one there who seems to care. All I see is cold, hard stares and glares looking back at me. And I realise at that moment, there's no one coming to help me. I'm on my own. And as that realisation dawns on me, I think of this little girl, because she was on her own. And like me, she's hoping, begging, wishing, pleading that someone's going to come and help her. But she's hoping, wishing, begging, pleading in vain, because no one's coming to help her. I was the only person that could have helped her, and I wasn't able to at the time. And no one's coming to help me because I'm on my own. I'm in the witness box. I'm meant to be on my own. I just didn't realise it. But that is where the similarities between what's going on for me and what's going on for her end. Because what this little girl went through was a million times worse than what I went through. I can only begin to imagine the depth of despair this poor child experienced all by herself. But having said that, I wouldn't wish what happened to me in that witness box on that day, in that court, to happen to anyone. I wouldn't wish it to happen up to my worst enemy. The questions kept coming, and I just couldn't answer them. All I could do is sit there with my mouth open, looking at a complete fool. I don't know how long it went on for. It could have been an hour, could have been 2 hours, could have been longer. All I can tell you is when you're in absolute agony, 5 minutes feels like a lifetime. Eventually, the judge glared at me and dismissed me. And when that happened, I wanted to run a million miles away from court. I never want to see the inside of a court ever again. And that's what I plan to do. I plan to run away and never go back. But something stopped me and said, no, Michael, that's not what you're going to do. You are going to go back to court again and again and again and again. Do you know why? Because what happened to you today, you're never going to allow to happen to you ever again. And that's exactly what I did. I went back to court again and again and again until I got good at giving evidence, until I was able to give great evidence, until I was able to write a book about giving evidence. It was too late for me to save this little girl. That was too late. But I can save an awful lot of other people from going through the sheer hell and misery that I went through. Because you see, my attitude had changed. I was no longer looking forward to someone to come and help me. I was willing and able to help myself. Now that is the second step in the 5-step system. My attitude had totally changed. Now, the third step in the 5-step system begins with the letter L, and L stands for listening. Because when you give evidence, you have to be able to listen. Now, had I been a better listener, it occurs to me that maybe I'd have been able to hear what this little child was trying to convey to me, which I couldn't pick up at the time. I didn't have a clue about. Maybe I'd have been able to think about what was going on for me at the time. But I wasn't there at the time, so I wasn't able to do it. When you're at court, you have to listen to what the judge says to you. The judge will tell you to do certain things. The judge may ask you questions that you have to answer. The barristers will definitely ask you questions that you have to answer. Now, if you can't listen, you can't answer questions. You can't answer questions. You can't give good evidence. You can't give good evidence. The chance of you getting the outcome that you want and need at court is slim to non-existent. So listening is a skill that you need to develop. Now, that is the third step in the 5-step system. The fourth step begins with letter M. M stands for mindful, because when you give evidence, you have to be mindful. You can't just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. The evidence you give has to be consistent with in the best interest of the child. It has to be consistent with the other evidence you've given and the other evidence before the court, and it has to be of a consistently high standard so the judge values it more highly than anyone else. So you have to be mindful, and in order to be mindful, you have to have the calmness, you have to have the attitude and the listening ability in order to be calm and in order to give great evidence and be mindful. Each step affects the other step. That is the fourth step in the 5-step system. The final step begins with letter M also, and M stands for mastery. And when you develop mastery over your ability to be calm, your ability to have a great attitude, where your ability to able to listen and be mindful, that's when you're in the very best part, the very best opportunity. That's when you have the very best opportunity to give the best evidence possible. Now, I know there's lots of concerns. There's fears about what the judge is going to be like, whether the barristers are going to be horrible to you, whether you can perform on the day, or whether nerves take over. You've got all sorts of fears. But what I want to remind you is if you follow that 5-step system isn't something that just works for me. It's a system that can work for anyone because it's a system. So you can get the same results, but you have to follow it. And you have to follow it repetitively in order to get the best results and give you the best chance of getting the result that you want and need at court. Now, when is the best time to do that? Well, the best time to do that was yesterday. The very next best time to do it is right here and now. Because what I want to remind you is when you go to court, when you get in that witness box, you are on your own. There's no one who's going to come and help you. You can't call a friend. There's no one you can call. You're on your own. So you have to learn these skills well in advance. Now, I've learned these skills well in advance. I've been to hell and back to be able to answer questions over and over and over again. And that's how I know the system works. So if you want to give the best evidence, if you want to give yourself the very best optimum chance of getting the result and outcome that you want and need for yourself, your family, and all the people that are important in your life, then you need to follow my 5-step system. Look me up, contact me, do whatever you need to do to get that system and learn it over and over again repetitively so that you can give the very best evidence at court. Email me on familycourtcoaching@gmail.com. Sorry, familycourtcoaching@gmail.com. See me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook group called Giving Evidence. Contact me wherever you can. My cell number or mobile number is +44 7960 07063. And as I said, if you want to get the very best chance, contact me and follow my 5-step system. Make it a part of your life because it will help you live a far better life. Thank you so much for listening.